The voicemail arrived early, before the sun had fully risen, when the world still felt quiet enough to pretend nothing bad could happen. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, a soft sound that shouldn't have carried so much weight. I almost ignored it. Something in my chest told me not to listen yet, but I pressed play anyway. My mother's voice filled the room. "Hi. We all agreed, you're not welcome at Christmas this year. It's best for everyone. Please don't make this difficult." That was it. No pause. No explanation. No emotion. Just a decision delivered like a cancelled appointment. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, staring at the wall as if it might explain what she wouldn't. I waited for the sting. The tears. The familiar ache of rejection that had followed me since childhood. But none of it came. Instead, I felt frozen. Like something inside me had finally gone still after years of bracing for impact. We all agreed. Those words echoed louder than the rest. Who was we? The family I paid for? The people who smiled at Christmas dinner while I quietly covered the bills? The same people who praised my independence whenever it was convenient for them, never realizing how lonely it felt to be strong only because no one else would be. I thought back to every holiday before this one. Me showing up early to help cook. Me cleaning up after everyone else had gone to sleep. Me listening while my siblings were praised, while I was told, "You don't need much, you're different." Different meant forgotten. Different meant expected to understand. Different meant I learned very young not to ask for too much. I replayed the voicemail once more, hoping I'd misheard something. An apology hidden between words. A crack in her voice. There was nothing. I didn't cry. That scared me more than anything. Instead, memories surfaced, uninvited and sharp. The day my father signed the house paperwork and asked me to temporarily put the mortgage in my name. The night the electricity almost got shut off and I paid it quietly, telling myself it was just until things got better. Christmas catering deposits, internet bills, insurance payments, my card, my credit, my responsibility. I told myself it was love. But love doesn't erase you. Love doesn't tell you that you're not welcome in the home you've been holding together. I stood up slowly and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was decorated in lights, warm, golden, perfect. I wondered how many people inside those houses felt chosen. How many were excited to be somewhere they belonged. For years, I believed if I gave enough, I'd earn my place. That voicemail proved something I hadn't wanted to admit: my place was only guaranteed as long as I was useful. I set my phone down on the bed. Something inside me shifted, not into anger, not yet, but into clarity. A quiet understanding that the version of me who kept sacrificing herself for acceptance had just been officially uninvited. And if I wasn't welcome anymore, then I didn't owe them anything either. That was the moment my childhood ended. Not with tears. Not with shouting. But with silence, and the calm realization that I finally saw the truth. I didn't react right away. That surprised me too. After the voicemail, I went through my day like everything was normal. I made coffee. I answered emails. I smiled at a stranger who held the door open for me. On the outside, nothing had changed, but inside, something fundamental had clicked into place. A lifetime of emotional noise had gone quiet, and in that quiet, I could finally think clearly. I had spent years believing that strength meant endurance. That love meant sacrifice. That if I carried enough weight, someone would eventually notice how heavy it was. They never did. That afternoon, I sat at my desk and opened my banking app, not dramatically, not shaking, not with rage. Just calmly, like someone reviewing a contract they had been trapped in for far too long. The screen filled with familiar numbers and scheduled payments, each one tied to a memory I had brushed off at the time. The $1,420 mortgage payment, drafted every month from my account, always on time. The electric bill, quietly climbing during winter, never missed. The gas, the internet, the little subscriptions no one thought about but everyone depended on. And then the one that made my chest tighten, the $5,000 catering balance, labeled Christmas event, due on Christmas Eve. I stared at it for a long moment. I remembered my mother's excited voice weeks earlier, talking about table settings and menu choices, as if magic paid for food and heat appeared out of love alone. She never asked if I was okay with it. She never asked if I was coming. She just assumed. That was the pattern, wasn't it? I existed in the background, unseen but essential. Invisible, yet expected to hold everything together. I thought about calling her. About explaining. About giving one last chance for understanding. But then her voicemail played again in my head. We all agreed. So I agreed too. I froze the mortgage payment first. One tap. A small, almost anticlimactic movement of my thumb. No alarms. No dramatic music. Just a quiet confirmation screen. Then the electric. The gas. The internet. The catering. Each action felt less like revenge and more like release. I wasn't taking something away, I was reclaiming what was mine. I had mistaken obligation for love, and now I was correcting the error. I expected guilt to follow. Panic. Fear. Instead, I felt light. For the first time, I wasn't managing consequences that weren't mine to carry. I wasn't cushioning the fall for people who had pushed me aside the moment I became inconvenient. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. This was what power felt like, not loud, not cruel, not desperate. Just quiet control. Boundaries. The kind no one notices until they're gone. They had never seen me as someone who could say no. They thought I was dependable because I was weak. They mistook my kindness for permanence. They forgot one crucial thing. Everything they relied on existed because I allowed it to. That evening, I turned my phone face down and made dinner for myself. No rushing. No guilt. No rehearsed explanations waiting in my head. Christmas was coming. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying anyone else through it. Christmas Eve arrived quietly, the way moments do before everything changes. I noticed the calm first. No messages asking where I was. No last-minute favors. No reminders about what time dinner started or which dessert I was supposed to bring. For the first time in years, my phone stayed silent, and I let it. Outside, the city glowed. Store windows sparkled with fake snow and perfect families. The world looked warm, forgiving. I wondered if my family's house looked the same from the outside, trimmed in lights, promising comfort it no longer deserved. I was halfway through folding laundry when my phone buzzed. Utility alert, service suspended due to non-payment. That was it. Just a single line of text. I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, reading it twice. Not because I was shocked, but because I understood what it meant. Somewhere across town, a house that had always been loud with expectations had gone quiet. I imagined the moment it happened. The lights flickering once, maybe twice, before surrendering. My mother pausing mid-sentence. Someone laughing nervously, assuming it was a quick outage. A switch flipped. Nothing. Confusion. Then irritation. Then panic. Another notification followed minutes later. Payment declined. Then another. Service interruption confirmed. I thought of the caterers pulling into the driveway, unloading trays, smiling politely as they reached for the card on file. The machine beeping. That awkward pause. The apology. The subtle shift in energy when money, real money, fails to show up. I imagined guests arriving to a dark house, coats still on, whispering questions that had no comfortable answers. I pictured my siblings checking their phones, refreshing apps, realizing too late that none of it was in their names. Because it never had been. At 7:42 p.m., my phone rang for the first time. I didn't answer. At 8:10, it rang again. Then again. Then messages started coming in, short, sharp, confused. Are you home? Did you change something? Call me. Now. I placed my phone face down on the table and lit a candle instead. Its small flame filled the room with soft light, steady and controlled. I made myself tea. I sat in the silence I had never been allowed to have before. By 9 o'clock, I imagined the truth sinking in. The realization that this wasn't a mistake or a glitch. That the person they had excluded was the same person who had kept everything running. The irony wasn't cruel. It was honest. I didn't feel joy at their discomfort. What I felt was confirmation. Proof that my presence had never been optional, it had been essential. They just never thought I'd stop. When I finally checked my phone before bed, there were 12 missed calls and more messages than I cared to read. The tone had shifted, from confusion to urgency to something close to fear. I turned the phone off. That night, while their house sat dark and unfinished, I slept peacefully. No guilt. No second-guessing. Just the quiet certainty that for once, the consequences belonged exactly where they should. Christmas Eve had gone dark for them. But for me? It was the first night I truly felt at ease. Christmas morning arrived like any other day, with the soft glow of sunlight spilling through my blinds. But unlike every other year, I didn't feel the familiar tug of obligation. No one's expectations waited at my door. No frantic phone calls before noon reminding me that I had forgotten to bring a dish, a gift, or my helpful presents. I made coffee, poured it into my favorite mug, and sat by the window, letting the quiet stretch around me like a warm blanket. It wasn't long before the first call came. My phone lit up with a name I knew too well, my mother. I let it ring. Then my brother. Then my aunt. Then another number I didn't recognize. Each ring was a reminder, the world I had been forced to maintain was finally in their hands, and they were panicked. I didn't answer. Not yet. By noon, the calls were non-stop. The messages grew frantic, "We can't pay this." The caterers left. "What did you do?" "The lights are out." "You need to fix this." I smiled faintly. Not because I was cruel. Not because I enjoyed watching them scramble. But because for the first time in years, I could hear them. Really hear them. The urgency in their voices, the fear that came from realizing that nothing, was under their control without me. Finally, I picked up. "Hello," I said calmly, letting my voice carry the quiet authority I had been building inside me for years. "Why would you do this?" My mother's voice cracked, and I realized for the first time she wasn't shouting, it was panic, raw and unfiltered. "Christmas is ruined. Everyone is leaving. We're humiliated." I stayed quiet for a moment, letting her words hang. There was a time I would have rushed to apologize. There was a time I would have tried to explain away her neglect, her disregard, and her cruelty. There was a time I would have begged to be let back in. But those years were gone. "You told me I wasn't welcome," I said finally, my voice steady. I simply stopped acting like I lived there. Silence filled the line. "I didn't embarrass you," I continued. "I just stopped protecting the image you built on my back. The home, the bills, the preparations, you didn't see it as mine to manage. But it was." A quiet sob came through the phone. I didn't soften. I didn't try to comfort. Because this wasn't about revenge in the way they imagined, it was about boundaries, recognition, and respect. "I hope you still had a Christmas," I said, letting those words fall softly, like snow outside. I finally did. I hung up. And just like that, the feeling inside me shifted. No anger. No resentment. Just peace. Sweet, unshakable peace. For years, I had been invisible, taken for granted, and expected to keep everyone else's world in order. Now, they understood, even if only briefly, what it felt like to be the one forgotten. That was my revenge, not the darkened house, not the declined payments, not the chaos they couldn't control. My revenge was something simpler and stronger, choosing myself. Choosing to stop apologizing for existing. choosing to finally protect my own peace. As I sipped the last of my coffee, the sunlight catching on the mug, I realized something important: Christmas didn't have to be about their approval. Not anymore. It could be about me. And for the first time, it truly was.